Hey everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about thoughts on an Arcanum remake. I've had different questions about it. I even touched upon this a little bit in the video I did on Arcanum as a Windows 10 app, where I actually have Arcanum up and running in Windows 10, and I talked about some things I might do about it, but I didn't finish the thought. I didn't do it as completely as I did, say, in the video called Thoughts on a Fallout Remake. So I'll link those two videos below, but I want to do this one, which will kind of collect all my thoughts on if I was to do a remake of Arcanum today, what would I do? And by remake, I want to stress that what I mean is it's still Arcanum. I mean, it still plays like Arcanum. I don't want to change the story. Just what were things that it shipped with that I wished I had fixed or balanced, and also what were some things that I wish I had gotten done before it shipped that I would have added if I had more time, which basically means more money. So, I think the obvious thing to start with is yes, I would fix the bugs that we shipped with, and I'd also balance a lot of the skills and spells and even some of the attribute effects. And I've mentioned, like, I wish beauty did a little more. I wish that harm wasn't the go-to spell because of how it's too fast to cast and it does too much damage and it scales to too much damage. So I'd fix all those things. And yes, I realize those have been fixed in a lot of fan patches. In fact, I'd probably look at what fans did and see what people's reactions were to those patches to guide my own balance goals. Because if I'm thinking about doing something that was already done in a fan patch and everybody hated it, maybe I'll rethink doing it. The other thing I would certainly do is I would make Arcanum run in a higher resolution, which would include two things. I would make the UI fit more nicely in that resolution, probably even give the option to run it with the original UI, but shrunk down to the center, middle, and then the upper corners, or a new, more modern, sleek UI where I basically push things to the corners and there's not even anything there when you don't need it. For example, a lot of modern games don't show you a health bar unless you're injured or you're in combat, so that would go away. One thing I'd love to do, if this really was a funded remake, is try to recover the original art files, which I do not have, and re-render everything at a higher resolution. Barring that, we'd have to upscale it, which is still pretty good. Upscalers are pretty good these days. Just because if I want it to run in higher resolution, I don't want it to be pixelated if you expand it, or let it run, with the camera farther out with much smaller sprites. I think I've mentioned I'd yank multiplayer. We only put that in there because we had to. I don't really think it's part of Arcanum. I don't think there are people out there pining for multiplayer Arcanum. I certainly am not. Yanking multiplayer means so many things can be done. We can rip out all the code for finding servers and the connection to the world opponent network, the WAN stuff, which doesn't even exist anymore. I mean, all that code can just be flushed. Everything will look cleaner. There's a lot of things that were done in code because we had to assume that we couldn't calculate it locally. That code can be either cleaned up or removed. I would almost certainly make the game turn-based only. If I don't need multiplayer, the only reason I had real-time, it was for multiplayer, so I'd probably get rid of multiplayer. And then, because it's turn-based only, there's a bunch of cool stuff I can do. One, I can balance everything for that. In real-time, there was this, you had to introduce the idea of maybe of a cooldown on things so you couldn't cast them so quickly. You had to do all sorts of things to make sure that the player didn't do things faster than made sense. But in turn-based, you got your turns. When your turn is over, you're not doing anything. Also, I could make a lot of cool improvements to the turn-based model. Some of the things I did in Temple, things like when enemies on their turn, you can have them skip movement or make their movement really fast, just so their turns go faster. You can make enemies that have sequential initiative just clump together and go at the same time. Maybe even group enemies, and those groups have one initiative for everybody. So let's say there was a necromancer and he had hired two bandits and he summoned a bunch of zombies. Maybe the necromancer's on one initiative roll, the bandits are on a second, and the zombies are on a third. I think that would be super fun because then you would see, you go, oh no, it's the bandit's turn. Oh no, it's the zombie's turn. But still, that would only be 3 times it's not your turn, as opposed to if there were, you know, one necromancer, 2 bandits, and 5 zombies, that would be 8 times where it wasn't your turn. So I think turn-based could be a lot cooler and a lot more fun, and your downtime would be a lot less. One thing that I really wanted to do in the base game, I'm not sure I ever talked about this, maybe I did when I talked about procedural sector generation, is something I never got working, and in some cases never even got to start on, was procedurally generated ruins and caves. So if I'm going to procedurally generate a sector, if there's a sector that no human artist or designer has gone in and touched, and it's completely being generated procedurally, I wanted to be able to make ruins or even caves and dungeons that were procedurally generated, so that the world not only was a lot more richer and had a lot more cool stuff to explore, but it gave people who like doing that like tons of extra hours of playtime, and every time you replayed Arcanum, it would be different. I think that could be super fun. Never ever did that. What I love about it is it doesn't change any multiplayer. It doesn't change any main story quest or side quest at all. Anything that's done by hand still exists, and any sector it touches will never be modified by this code. But what it does mean is if you just wander into a forest or wander up into a mountain, you may find a cave or an old castle or a dungeon. I think that could be really cool. Something I did try doing and could not figure out how to get working right and abandon was doing roads. I wanted roads that connected all the cities and villages, and potentially even major places, like if there was a castle or a fort or something, they would be connected with roads as well. The idea was it was faster to travel along the road, so over map travel, world map travel was faster along roads. Also, they had completely separate encounter tables. So roads may have guards along them, but bandits are going to concentrate on roads because that's where the caravans are. Monsters, some monsters may be more often encountered on roads, the smarter ones, where other monsters may never be encountered along roads. I love that idea. There's a lot of issues with this, which is not only generating the roads in the world map level, but then having them look correct at the sector level, where they don't just cut through a mountain or go over a river, or if they do, a bridge is generated for that river. So all that stuff would have to be handled. Also, road intersection. That's I believe road generation itself might be an NP complete problem depending on how it's framed. So a lot of work there, but I think it would be cool. I'd probably restore the option for how I wanted the game to be, which is not everything be 1 point. Because the code's still there, I can just put it in as an option. If you want to play single point Arcanum the way it originally shipped, that's an option. If you want to play multi-point, that's an option. I'd also get rid of the level cap. The way Arcanum worked, we only put in the level cap so that you would be forced to make new characters. So you wouldn't eventually be able to have a character that had everything, every skill and every spell and every tech schematic and everything. But I know a lot of people like to play without a level cap. It'd certainly be trivial for Arcanum to remove that. So I would probably also, and this is just for fun and just because since it's me making the remake, I get to do this. I would put in a hook for the idea we had for Arcanum 2. I have a video about that. I'll link that below too. But it was called Journey to the Center of Arcanum. I would add a couple locations and a couple NPCs and some dialogues that would just hint that that is something that is going on. Maybe Franklin Payne, the great explorer, disappears before the end of the game. Or maybe you can meet him at his house with his wife and he's building his subterranean boring machine, but it's not ready yet. It doesn't work. And there is no giant hole in the ground. That's the kind of stuff I would love to add so that when you're playing the base game, you're like, oh, that's interesting. And maybe there's a quest that takes you there and there seems some reason that thing exists, that area exists. But then it turns out when you play Arcanum 2, oh, that's why that was there. That's fun. Those are the kind of things I want to do. So I would not touch the storyline, the dialogues, any of the quests. I think they're fine, except to fix bugs. I'd leave all that alone. But anyway, I think that's everything on my list of what I would do if I were to make an Arcanum remake today. So, hope you like that.